Hello everyone and welcome back to Heroes of Nottingham. I'm Brandon and today we're going to be doing a deck tech for Amber Ruby Mufasa. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So first we have our 1-drops. We have Stitch, New Dog, and then we have 4 Kita Atlantean. We are playing both shift versions of these cards and we'll get to those in a bit. We're just going to go by curve, but we have our 1-drop 2/2s with pretty good shift targets. We need them. Also, they have the upside of one of the most anti-aggro cards right now is Queen of Hearts, and they trade with Queen of Hearts, so great. We put them out on 1 because it improves our turn 2, which is Piglet. One of the most aggressive cards in the game, and honestly one of the strongest cards in the game right now, is this one. So as long as you have 2 other characters in play, this character quests for 3 instead of 1. So if you go 1, 2, and then another card on turn 3, you're questing for at least 4 by turn 3, and it sets you up for some really, really aggressive turns. Next up, we have Mother Gothel. Now, Mother Gothel is a decent body that can trade with characters like Simba or Fox or what have you. It's a good body, but also we're playing Rapunzel, and we'll get to that once we get to our 4-drops, but very good. It's good stats and enables your card draw engine, which, Rapunzel. We have 3 Simbas for Bodyguard. It's not so bad to play turn 1 Kita, turn 2 Piglet, and then followed up with a tapped Simba, because then you quest for 4, and you have your Simba in the way to block your Piglet, so good synergy there. And then finally, for our 2-drops, we have a 1 of Queen of Hearts. Now, I don't love this card, but there are times where you want this card in your opening hand. Let's say you're playing against Amber Amethyst aggro. The deck is slightly faster, but other characters are usually pretty small, so this can sometimes get 2-for-1 value. Sometimes you just need the 1 of Rusher. So it's not great, but it does what it's supposed to do, and if it's not necessary, it's ink. And then I forgot about the only non-character cards we have in this deck, and it's 3 of the Bare Necessities. So there are different builds that play, 3 to 4 copies of either Lantern, Teeth and Ambition, and Bare Necessities. And I found that Bare Necessities is, at least in my opinion, my preferred option, because I can hit their, maybe it's their Fishbone Quill, maybe it's Grab Your Sword, maybe it's Be Prepared. There are just so many. It's so versatile. You can just hit any non-character, and you can also sing it for free. It just seems like the best choice to me, but I can certainly see merit to Lantern or Teeth and Ambitions. It's really just your choice, but this is what I've chosen to go with, and it's worked out pretty well for me. Then we have the only 3-drop in the deck, and that's Doc. Doc is powerful because you not only quest for 2, but you play it on turn 3 and you quest immediately on the next turn, on turn 4, and you're dropping your 5-drops, which we're pretty heavy on 5-drops. We'll get to that in a second. But overall, this card is great, and it helps you ramp while also scoring 2 lore. So very powerful. Next, we have our 4 of Rapunzel, one of the best cards in the game, always has been, likely always will be. Works well with Mother Gothel, works well with Simba, works well with Doc, works well with whatever. It's just a great card. Next, we have 3 copies of Prince Eric, and this is honestly one of the stronger cards in the deck. It's uninkable, so you need to be careful with your mulligans not to get too many of them, but this card not only quests for 2 and forces your opponent to eventually deal with it, because, with a 2-quester, by turn 4, you're already sitting likely at like 10 lore, so you're questing for 2, they're going to have to deal with it. But as soon as they deal with it, they're losing something. Now, they may have control over when it gets traded, but for example, one of the tougher cards to deal with would be something like Cinderella Stouthearted, 7-drop, 5/5, resist 2. Well, this card trades with it. This card trades with anything, and that's what's great about it. Our final 4-drops are just 2 copies of Hades. We can get back, maybe we get back Piglet, or we're getting back, Eric to deal with something, or we're going to get back one of these bigger cards we're going to get to in a moment. But, Hades overall is good. It's a decent flip from Mufasa, because Mufasa goes down, you flip Hades, get Mufasa back. It's really good value. Next, we have Maui. Not a whole lot needs to be said about Maui. It's one of the, again, just like Rapunzel, some of the strongest cards in the game. It deals with a lot. It's almost always a 2, if not a 3-for-1, so great card. Now we have the namesake of the deck, Mufasa. 5-drop 3/3, quest for 2. When he is banished, you flip the top card. If it's a character, you put it in play. Now we're playing this many cards still that are above 5 ink, so you're almost, you're likely to up value, but likely you're going to hit something that quests for 2 or more anyway. So it's replacing itself with more lore that your opponent has to deal with. So great card. It's the backbone of the deck, really, because it's a sticky threat and it's something that your opponents don't want to deal with but have to deal with. The one downside to playing something, these 3 copies of Bare Necessities, is that there is a very slim chance that you flip Bare Necessities and then you miss out on your value. But I think these are worth having because there are just so many cards that you can get rid of, get out of your opponent's hand that just improve the game overall, that it's worth the risk. All right, our final 5 drops are Kida, Protector of Atlantis. Now, I only have 2 of these. It's important to note that with the rules that were announced earlier this week, that when this character enters, it gives all other characters in play -3 strength until your next turn. And so if I play it on my next turn, so through my opponent's turn. However, this does not affect characters that entered on their turn, such as Maui. So this is not actually protection against Maui, but it's a good protection card against like steel cards, Tinkerbell, Robin Hood, whatever. It's going to prevent them from being able to challenge and banish your characters very easily. So very good protective card to let the rest of your characters quest, protect them, and then the following turn you can quest again because you might lose them, but you're getting a ton of lore, and that's what's the most important thing. Next up, we have Stitched Rockstar, another shift target for our 1-drop. So Kida is here, Stitch is here. Stitch is great. Not a whole lot needs to be said about it. So set 1 card. But it's a shift for 4, quest for 3, 3/5, and it says when a character of 2 or less lore enters play, you can choose to exert them. If you do, you can draw a card. Now, keep in mind that all of these cards over here, other than these Bare Necessities, fit the condition for Stitch. So it's a card draw engine, but also it just quests for 3. Most of the time you play it and your opponent's really scared of it and they kill it immediately. But if they don't, quest for 3. Next up, we have 3 Madame Medusa. Now, I was really on the fence for a while about Madame Medusa and Lady Tremaine, and ultimately, I like Lady Tremaine more, but Madame Medusa hits the more important targets, and that's ultimately why I'm going to play with Madame Medusa over Lady Tremaine. Cards such as Beast Tragic Hero, Robin Hood are very popular right now. I mean, even Ariel Spectacular Singer, Hiram Flaversham, there are so many cards that this card can choose to hit, where with Lady Tremaine, even though she quests for 2 and it kind of fits the aggro theme more, this card is very good at removing your opponent's important characters, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, because we're not so much trying to control the game most of the time, but it does help for tempo if I can play this, remove the thing that is going to allow them to catch up, and continue to quest with the rest of my characters. So that's the decision with Madame Medusa over Lady Tremaine, but both are great cards. Next up, we have Perdita. Now, this is another uninkable, but this card is extremely, extremely strong in this build, because your opponent may have at 6 already stabilized to some extent and removed your low drops. While you play Perdita and get back Piglet, let's say, put Perdita in play, get back Piglet, and immediately your opponent's on high threat. Like you've put a lot of pressure on your opponent again, because they have to deal with one of the 2, if not both of the characters, because all you have to do the following turn is play a character and you're questing for 5 again. She just enters, reanimates something in Magic terms, puts a character of 2 or less in play. It's not only an enter effect, it's also what she quests. So you can put Perdita in, get a Piglet back, quest, get Kida back, then quest with Piglet and get 3 more lore. So it's just a very high threat card. It's a must answer. Next up, for our very top end, we have 3 Stitch Carefree Surfer. This card has been good for a while. Namely, the card quest for 2, which for a 7-drop, you'd think maybe more, but maybe you want more. But this card also draws 2 when it enters, because you likely have 2 other characters in play. Also, it has 8 willpower, which is a really tough stat for Steel. Even still, they're going to have to devote more than just 1 card, 1 resource into getting rid of it. So you're going to get your 2 or more lore out of it, and that's what you want. You get your 2 cards, you get 2 or more lore out of it. Sounds like a great deal to me. Next up, we have 2 dragons. Now, you can play more than 2, but likely, if you play more than 2, it's just an increased chance that these cards are just going to be inked. if you play, like I've found that playing less of them, I have more opportunities to actually play the one or two that I have. It does reduce your chance of flipping them with Mufasa, but considering we have cards like Perdita, like there's just so many other good targets that you don't necessarily need to rely on flipping Maleficent. I don't feel like that you need to play 4. I think 2 is a good number, because then you're actually incentivized to want to like hold on to it and play it rather than just inking it as soon as you see it. And our final card, Maleficent, when she enters, she banishes something. It's just, they take out your Mufasa, you flip Maleficent, you take out their other threat. It's just great. And our final card is a 1 of Chernobog. Chernobog is great because a lot of your low drops are going to end up entering play, getting some lore, and then going down, and you're going to have a high density of low characters that are in your discard pile. What Chernobog enters costs usually between like 3 and 5. It's a 9/9 that quests for 3. Obviously, a card like this is going to be susceptible to something like Maleficent. However, that's 9 ink. A lot of the cards like Madame Medusa that are very popular right now cannot hit this card. Steel removal spells are very bad at removing this card. So you play it, you get the quest for 3, you get to remove a couple things, whatever it is that the game needs you to do. It's a pretty versatile card. You also have the benefit of shuffling back in. Let's say it's super late game. You can shuffle back in your Perditas. You can shuffle back in your Carefree Surfers. You can shuffle back in your Rapunzels, whatever. You can shuffle back in all those threats that you've now played and discarded back into your deck. Now, there is somewhat of a conflict of synergy with Perdita, but it's worth playing because Chernobog often comes down and puts an amount of pressure that your opponent can't deal with at the point that you're playing it. So overall, we have a very versatile deck. This deck isn't quite as fast as, let's say, Amber Amethyst, but it does have more resiliency than that kind of aggro deck, because you have your graveyard synergies. You also have card draw with Rapunzel and Mother Gothel. You have card draw with Stitch, both Stitches. It's overall, you can choose to mulligan how it fits the bill. I would honestly recommend always trying to mulligan to get at least 1 Piglet and a 1-drop. That way you can go 1-drop, 2-drop, 2-drop, or 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, and then you get your 4 lore out of Piglet, and you can immediately put the pressure on your opponent. However, this deck can play a good mid-range game against other aggro decks or what have you. So overall, I've had a lot of success with this deck, and I think you will too if you're more of an aggro player. I think the meta right now is a bit more geared towards control, which this deck has a pretty good matchup with. At the very least, if it's not a good matchup, it's an even matchup. I don't feel bad playing this against some of the control decks because of the resiliency of the cards and bare necessities. There's just a lot of good answers in here. So if you're an aggro player, highly recommend this one. Go ahead and check it out. Let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you for tuning in. I've been Brandon. Like, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time here on Heroes of Nottingham. Thank you.